Hello everyone, Storm 101 here. Today we'll be having an update on the tropics here. We do have some good news for Tropical Storm Gamma, although not so much of any good news for Delta, however. We'll talk about both of these systems. We're going to go ahead and start off with Tropical Storm Gamma, which right now has sustained winds of 45 miles an hour. It's been dying down most of the day. It's got a pressure of 1,003 millibars, but, well, we'll get into the infrared satellite imagery in just a moment. Let's take a look into the forecast cone, and as you can see here, we do expect this to die out into somewhere into Mexico, which is some good news here. So right now there's no threat to the United States at this time, so that is some really good news there for us here as well. And what we had it before is the cone was starting to turn towards the United States, but I think there's some model confusion with that, and really people are thinking that gamma could affect the United States, but it's not. There's just some model confusion, which I'll show you guys that in just a moment. Look at satellite imagery. There is no convection around Tropical Storm Gamma. This is due to some wind shear that's in effect. As of right now, most of your convection is far to the northeast of Gamma. Your main circulation is right here. So Tropical Storm Gamma will die down to slowly today, and wherever it makes landfall should become a tropical depression and then should die out somewhere into Mexico there as well. So again, no threat to the United States from Gamma. And like I said about model confusion, you can see here that it'll likely make landfall into Mexico, but you see here some of these balls do bring it to the north. These balls think that Tropical Storm Delta is Tropical Storm Gamma, but it's actually not. So there's just some model confusion going on. So just ignore the models going towards Louisiana from Tropical Storm Gamma. So just wanted to let you guys know about that, which unfortunately not many people have been listening to me about that. So, and it looks like I'm going to be correct onto that one. So let's move on to wind shear. You can see here with the GFS, it is hitting some wind shear by the GFS, so it's doing a pretty good job, and you can see eventually it dies out as well. What's also quite different here is that there's actually more moisture going on now than what the GFS showed yesterday. There was actually more dry air, but we now have more moisture than dry air. And since that's the case here, Tropical Storm Delta will be good to go to intensify quite quickly here as well. And that kind of leads us to Tropical Storm Delta. So we're done with Tropical Storm Gamma. Let's move on to Tropical Storm Delta, which now has winds of 45 miles an hour. This is currently gaining strength with central pressure at 1,002 millibars, moving west at 7 miles an hour, which is now just to the south and southwest of Jamaica at this time here. So for anybody that's watching from Jamaica, this will miss you to the south, although you guys could see some tropical storm winds and a decent amount of rain as well. So let's click on Delta here. They just done this now, but we do now have hurricane warnings in effect for portions of northwestern Cuba. We also have tropical storm warnings in effect for some of those areas as well. But what do we do expect this to do is make landfall as a hurricane, which for right now, there is some good news for right now from Tropical Storm Delta. Bad news is this will likely, maybe rapidly intensify because in this general region, right in here, nearby Cuba and Mexico, there is extremely high ocean heat content. And what that does, that's really going to help the storm here gain strength. Adding on top of that, you got extremely warm sea surface temperature, so and also very low wind shear. So this thing is good to go to rapidly intensify later today. So if this thing can get organized quickly, this thing here will be ready to rapidly intensify. But when it gets closer to landfall, here, when it gets closer to landfall by Louisiana, it should die down. This reason why it will die down before landfall is because it's below average sea surface temperatures. You got sea surface temperatures in the low, kind of in the low to mid 70s, some upper 70s in some areas. Really, above 80 degrees is favorable for tropical development, but really, in general, you got temperatures below 80 degrees in a pretty decently large area. Kind of tell to the 1 to 3 day cone point right here. Past that is temperatures below 80 degrees at for sea surface temperature. So really, this thing here will die down before landfall, which is some good news. The bad news is that this thing can rapidly intensify into a Category 2 hurricane, but could it exceed a Category 2 hurricane? That's a part we don't really quite know yet. And if it does do that, it could be stronger than at landfall than what's forecast right now. Even though it'll die down, it'll still be stronger than what's forecasted, which I believe, if I'm correct, that the National Hurricane Center's got this forecasting at landfall maybe a weak or strong. What I mean is a weak Category 2 hurricane or a strong Category 1 hurricane. I'm not 100% sure about that, but they do. But what they are forecasting this as max intensity is a Category 2 with 105-mile-an-hour winds. So to keep in mind of that. So let's take a look into some models here. You can see our tropical storm delta still trying to get organized at this time. Here's Jamaica right here. It's going to be hard to see. But you can see your main circulations right here. You got tons of thunderstorm activity. So tropical storm delta is starting to get organized. And here's the forecast track from the hurricane model. So you can see here, they do expect this to make landfall in the next pretty much between the 96 hours and 120 hours time frame at this time here, but you can see where it makes landfall really anywhere either in southeastern Louisiana or southern Mississippi. That's looking to be the general area for potential landfall at this time here. I would say the primary threat with this system here for right now is going to be a lot of rain, which we'll look into the GFS in just a moment because it has a pretty good idea of what I'm thinking about rainfall wise. Here's the intensity forecast by the hurricane model. So you can see here, two models do bring it into a low end category 4. That's the worst case scenario for right now, where it really rapidly intensifies. But it kind of slows down when it gets into those cooler waters and then just drops here when it makes landfall. So let's look at the situation right uh, by those two models there, the worst case scenario. But the majority of the models do bring this into a medium category 2 hurricane there as well. And I think that's looking to be the most likely scenario at this point here. But the worst case scenario is that this may intensify to a major hurricane, which is a possibility at this time here as well. Let's look into some other models for the forecast track. Here's the Gfs Ensembles. You can see here, just like the hurricane model, southeastern Louisiana, or maybe even into southern Mississippi, eventually moving into the Tennessee Valley, into the Lower Ohio Valley as well. It's also the same way from the GFS parallel ensembles. You can see it's a little bit further to the east here as well. So, but this model here does not really quite do a good job, unfortunately. So, but overall, the overall agreement is that it'll make landfall probably somewhere in southeastern Louisiana or southern Mississippi. Although National Hurricane Center's cone is anywhere from like I believe that's like Panama City, Florida, somewhere in that area, all the way to Lake Charles, Louisiana. So it's quite a widespread. Although I will not be surprised if this kind of shrinkens into Alabama, Florida state line, into maybe into central Louisiana coast there. I would not doubt to see that shrinking into that there as well. And let's talk about that rainfall really quick from the GFS here. So We use this website for this one. And let's look into the European model for the track. And as you can see here, the max intensity here is kind of in the central Gulf here. If we kind of zoom in here, you can see your sustained winds 70 miles an hour. It's really a category 1 hurricane at that point. But you can see here it dies down before landfall. And I think that's going to be the most likely scenario. It dies down before landfall, then eventually moves to the northeast as well. And kind of on the northern edge of the storm system, there's going to be tons of rain. As you can see here from the European model, showing tons of rain on the northern end side. If we look into the rainfall amounts in the next 10 days, you can see here some areas may be able to see up to 10 inches of rain for the European model, but this can likely change around some. And this is not the official forecast, but what the models are indicating that there could be a lot of rain coming, at least on the northern end side of the system. Here's the GFS model, kind of similar here, with rainfall amounts 5 to 6 inches of rain. There's some areas around 7 inches of rain, so that's looking to be one of the primary threats here for right now. Is there's going to be a lot of rain coming, potentially a lot. But again, this can likely shift around. That's like 10 days out, so it'll likely change around some. Here's my updated forecast here for Tropical Storm Delta. This is my forecast, not the National Hurricane Center's, and this will likely change. And you can see here, versus my forecast yesterday, it looks quite different with the intensity. So right now, it's southwest of Jamaica. It's right now 45-mile-an-hour winds. I've made this before the National Hurricane Center's update, so about 10 o'clock, I'm forecasting it to be a tropical storm with 50-mile-an-hour winds. Then by 10 a.m. Tuesday, 60-mile-an-hour winds. But when it gets to by Cuba, Category 1 hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds. When it passes Cuba by 10 o'clock a.m. by Wednesday, Category 1, 85 miles an hour. Really just a steady gaining strength 10 miles an hour to 20 miles per hour by each day, really in general. But then when it gets closer to those cooler waters, it'll start to slow down with a Category 2 of 100-mile-an-hour winds by 10 a.m. Thursday. But then when it makes landfall, I'm forecasting this to be probably around 10 o'clock p.m. Thursday. Obviously, that will likely change around some. But the intensity, though, I'm forecasting to be a Category 1 hurricane with 80-mile-an-hour winds. Then by 10 o'clock a.m. by Friday, when it gets more into Alabama and Mississippi, be a tropical storm with 45-mile-an-hour winds. But again, this will likely change around some, like you guys saw yesterday. Major change to the forecast by the intensity and also to the timing. Don't really pay attention much to the timing because if you compare my forecast to the National Hurricane Center's, it is generally on the same day, Thursday, but mine's more into the nighttime hours, and the National Hurricane Center's forecast is more in the morning hours. So, huge difference between our forecast with the timing. But again, like I said, the timing will likely change around some. But it's looking to be the general timing for landfall is going to be on Thursday at this time. So, to keep in mind of that. So if anybody that lives across southeastern Louisiana, so Mississippi, you may be into portions of Alabama, just keep in mind, just watch the system here still very closely. Here as well, there's still a lot of time before landfall, so this forecast can change a lot of time, but still keep an eye on the system here very closely. And I forgot to show the wind shear and the precipitable water in the atmosphere from the GFS model for Delta. So let's take a look into that. And like I said, pretty much like no wind shear for Delta. So it's good to go for gaining strength here. But when it kind of gets close to landfall, you can see there's some very high amount of wind shear when it makes landfall there as well. So really overall, wind shear is not really going to stop the system here till it makes landfall. So that's very unfortunate there. But when we look into the precipitable water, force rate, there's not going to be any dry air stopping this here. Really, the only stopping mechanism for delta is when it gets close to landfall. That's below average sea surface temperatures, and also low amount of ocean heat content. So that's what's going to slow down the system here. That's the good news for right now for delta, is that it'll likely die down before it makes landfall. So yeah, but anybody in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, again, just keep an eye on the system here very closely here. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys did enjoy my tropical update here. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. If you really do like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, you can put in the comment section down below. I'll answer you guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.